The 1996 gaming phenomenon Pokémon has now grown into the massive entertainment juggernaut we know it as today as the second best-selling video game franchise, only second to Mario. And this was no Cinderella story of an offbeat game accidentally stumbling into the spotlight at the right time and place. Pokémon was an out-of-nowhere sensation, sweeping the world with its anime, trading card game, but most importantly, its pair of Game Boy games, Red and Green, or Red and Blue as they were remade outside of Japan. What made Pokémon so great? Why did its struggling handheld console, the Game Boy, suddenly blast up in sales? There's something incredible at work with the original Pokémon games that's becoming lost to recent generations. A piece of history and conception that feels forgotten in current installments. Let's forget about the nostalgia-fueled bias plaguing the community. Let's forget about the games as they are now, in order to better envision them as they originally were. Let's go back to 1996 to discover the core of a franchise lost in time. Let's be honest about Pokémon Generation 1. I was 5 years old. My parents hated the idea of video games, and especially of me playing them, but eventually met me halfway by buying me a Game Boy Color, a copy of Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, and Pokémon Blue. It was within that dark gray, unlit 2-inch square that I was first introduced to video games. I recall needing help from an adult from my siblings' daycare, trying to figure out how to leave the opening house. I needed help from a neighbor to learn how to save my game progress and continue later. These types of things seem silly now, but they were the first steps into groundbreaking discoveries, not only for me, but for the future of Pokémon and its formulation. I've since played every generation of Pokémon several times over, growing to recognize this grand formula. Looking back on the original over 20 years later, I can now see something I never recognized before. Something special that becomes lost in translation upon rehashings and new installments. Nowadays, anyone even thinking of making this claim are met with hordes of stubborn, ignorant players accusing them of being a Gen 1er. Labeling as a concept is especially detrimental to the fanbase due to the lack of understanding of the dismission. Maybe there is something to the original, but they wouldn't know it unless they heard it from an honest, unbiased player. Pokémon Generation 1 begins with the player being given a Pokédex, and with the lofty goal of completing it by cataloging all 150 Pokémon. This became a staple in the series, but never again was the player truly tasked with completing the Pokédex first and foremost. Possibly due to the ever-rising amount of Pokémon, nearing 1,000 currently, making the journey more cumbersome than enjoyable. Instead, the player is given the Pokédex per tradition, then tasked with taking on the Pokémon League. This inevitable alteration alone changed the core mechanic from collecting to battling. The originals brilliantly sold on the collecting aspect alone, as no player could collect all 150 Pokémon on one cartridge. They needed friends, link cables, social interaction, the personal touch. Something Wi-Fi and the global trade system spoil for us nowadays. So many Pokémon were exclusive to either game, and with 4 only evolving by trade, further encouraged collecting not just for fulfilling the professor's initial wishes, but tickling the player's urge to collect. This certainly can be done in newer games, but it's pushed to the side and is no longer the point. In the original, Professor Oak scatters his aides across the region, awarding you with gifts, only if your Pokédex is being filled at a steady rate. This is the game reminding you, hey, remember the point of the game? Gotta catch 'em all! This never happens anymore because collecting has been just as abandoned as Pokémon's original tagline. The 2016 mobile sensation Pokémon Go was such a hit not because of its initially including the original 150 Pokémon, but because it was a return to Pokémon's roots, collecting, social interaction, shared experiences. Battling was there, but it came second. Which brings me to gyms and the Pokémon League. Concepts that would become staples in the franchise for generations. Gyms were introduced in the original games to halt the player's progression and assure that they were also attuned to the battling half of the game. Otherwise, the game would become an open safari and hold no sense of reward for discovering new environments with new Pokemon. This encouraged players to catch new Pokemon and learn how to battle against the first gym leader, Brock, who is intentionally given Rock-type Pokemon to teach players a hard lesson about weaknesses and resistances through trial and error. Failed battles would send players back to search for more effective Pokemon against the threat, coming full circle back to collecting. In the remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green, new stronger Pokemon were added to the early game, as well as new moves given to old Pokemon in order to make the game significantly easier. If a 5-year-old me didn't need Metal Claw on Charmander in order to defeat Brock, neither do you. Brock's initial intention of walling off reckless players has been lost to the generations. The gyms eventually unlock the entire region, allowing the player to challenge the Elite Four at Indigo Plateau. And what is your reward for clearing this challenge? Passage into the Cerulean Cave, an environment full of rare and powerful Pokemon helping you complete those final slots in your Pokedex, all before the final challenge with number 150 himself, Mewtwo. Battling in gyms in the original Pokemon never detracted from the collecting part of the game. More so, it encouraged and rewarded players, something foreign to Pokemon games now, where gyms are there to be there to fulfill a tradition. Pokemon Sun and Moon broke this tradition, but unfortunately replaced it with what it calls trials, even more unrelated to the initial concept that drove the series this far to begin with. Does finding ingredients to a soup or identifying a blatant difference in pictures add to the game's collectability aspect, or anything for that matter? The problem with Pokemon's formulation is its derailment from its proof of concept, which the dictionary defines as evidence, typically derived from an experiment or pilot project, which demonstrates that a design concept, business proposal, or whatever is feasible. What this means is that the collecting and battling aspects of Pokemon worked to encourage each other and build upon each other in a way that better added to the experience. Too much collecting rewards Pokemon ready for battle. Too much battle rewards new possibilities for collecting, both of which are enhanced by experiencing the game with other people. This social bond between real-life players, and guided by this proof of concept, changed the medium by taking an introverted and isolated audience and physically bringing them together in a brilliant form of social solidarity. Though my parents didn't know it at the time, what they feared would isolate me became the stereotype-shattering social conduit I needed. And Super Mario Bros. Deluxe? Yeah, it was fun too. Hey, thanks for watching and supporting this channel. If I have any closing thoughts, it's don't accuse fans of nostalgia bias without hearing them out first. Besides, there's nothing wrong with players playing favorites anyway. But hey, that's just if we're being honest. More of these videos are on their way, so remember to leave a like and subscribe for more, and I will see you all in the next video. Boo!